Hello again, everybody. So I've got a new video for you on Ruby the Elite, and today what we're going to do is we're going to do a 1,000 mile check on the transmission. So that's going to be our focus today, is taking the transmission cover off and going over with you what I check for. Of course, this is what also the service manual has you check for, but I'm going to go over those things real quick with you just to see how things are going underneath there. And there's a transmission cover there. So I'm going to go ahead and take the side panel off and go from there. Now, the last time I took this cover off was at just over 1,000 miles, and I had replaced the belt as well as cleaned everything out under there. Used some Simply Green just to clean it all out. So I'm interested to see after 1,000 miles how dirty it looks under there. And we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll go ahead and start taking the side cover off. Real easy to remove the side cover. You have one screw right there. You got a bolt that goes there, and actually you first take off that back piece of plastic that wraps around. There's two screws that hold it in. And then you have your turn signal detach. And after that, this panel will come off. Alright, now that the cover's off, we will go ahead and you have to remove the red sidebar. And there's a couple of bolts that hold it in underneath the mat, and then there's also one towards the front. Alright, I actually took this off as well because I wanted to tighten down my snaps, and those snaps are actually what hold. Once I removed those anyways, it made it easier to get this off. You can see there's a bolt there, and a bolt there, and then all the way up at the front, got one right there, which gives you access to get the front of the transmission cover off. And the way that this cover comes off is you got those two bolts right there in the middle. And there's also one right there. Alright, so we got the cover off. Took the two bolts out of the middle. And then there's one on the underside and another one. And one of the things to be mindful of is this gasket, which it's reusable. Just got to make sure it's in place. And it is kind of a pain to keep it in place, I'll be honest with you. But if you try to run the bike without this, it's going to vibrate. And I know that because I tried. I actually took this off and put the cover on without it, and you hear a little vibration. So I put it back on again. So learn from my mistake. So looking at the inside, there's obviously some dust. This is what it looks like underneath once you remove the cover. So your variator is in the back, and there is no, that I could find, variator that will work on this bike except for the one that it came with. So if you ever find an aftermarket one, please let me know, because I could not find one. And underneath here you have your clutch weights along with your pads that are on the weights. And I had sent that to a guy in Michigan. He's on eBay. If you look up clutch remanufacture, he ends up putting a Kevlar coating material on and removes the asbestos coating that's on there, and it grabs so much better. I'm going to go ahead and take these off and take a look at the belt. And then I'll also inspect the rollers that are inside of the variator. So I'm going to go ahead and get my impact wrench and be right back. Alright, using my impact wrench, 19 millimeter, removed the nut and the washer, and now this is going to come off. Great tool to have. Add it to your arsenal as an impact wrench. Once you remove this, when you go to put it back on, be very mindful of those splines. Make sure you have it on all the way, because if you strip these, then you're in a lot of trouble. Then you gotta split the case and replace it, and you don't want to do that. So just be mindful when you go to put this back on that you have this on stretched enough from the rear, and I'll show you that when I go to put it back on. But right now we're gonna inspect it, so we're gonna put that down there along with our stuff there. Now the belt has got just under 1,000 miles on it, and I could tell by looking at it that it's wearing really well. So it's a Bando belt. Do yourself a favor and buy a quality belt, not a Chinese belt. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this all up too. Wipe it all down with a little bit of that Simply Green. Make sure it's dry before I put it back on. And then that'll help with any slipping as well. So if your transmission is slipping, usually the two things that are causing is the belt slipping, or even worse is those clutch pads are not grabbing the bell any longer. So I'll show you those in a second when I go to take this nut off, what I'm talking about. But now that we have the belt off, when you go to remove the variator, make sure you have your hand. There's one more that goes on the inside, one shim. And this whole thing comes off along with the boss that's in the middle. When you flip it upside down, and you're going to notice right away on mine that I removed the plate. When you go to service this the first time, Honda in the 80s would put a plate on the back, which I don't even have any longer because you can throw it out. It's just a restrictor plate. But you remove that back plate, and then as soon as you remove the ramp plate here, you'll notice that it'll be completely packed with grease on the inside, and that grease is going to do nothing but get in your way. So as you can see, I have some sliders that I used, which these are a great product that I highly recommend. So when you put these sliders on, they just tend to work better by pushing the plate out. You don't tend to get flat spots on these because the motion is just pushing forward rather than a roller spinning. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all the stuff out of here. You can see there's a little bit of dust, but this is nothing compared to what you're going to see the first time you remove this. So you'll remove the back plate, get rid of the back plate, clean all the grease out of here completely, pull all the rollers out, clean all the rollers out. You can put some Dr. Pulley on like I have here, or you can go ahead and put what the manufacturer, Honda's got rollers in. I think they're 21 grams. I think these are 18 gram Dr. Pulleys. They give you a little bit more pull off the line. I was thinking about putting even a lighter weight in. As I'm losing weight myself, I'll put lighter weights in, but you can see that there is some dust and there is a little bit of wear. So I'll clean these up, put them back on, clean all the dust out, and then as you can see in there, everything looks fine. I'll wipe this all out in here. You can see there's some dust to clean out as well, and dirt. But I wanted to show you the inside of the variator. Okay, so we removed the 14 millimeter nut using our impact wrench and pull off the clutch bell. And the bell's in really good shape. It's not blue underneath or anything like that. So I'll clean this up. Just use a Scotch-Brite pad, you know, nothing that's going to be real abrasive to it. Clean it up just a little bit, and you can see the clutch, and you can see the clutch pads. And the clutch pads were redone by that eBayer in Michigan. Put Kevlar pads on my stock clutch. So you mail this to him, and he takes the old pads off and puts some new ones on, and he did a great job. these grab so much better than what was on there from Honda. So I'll add him to the description so that you could take advantage, at least on the 125. Some of the other bikes you have definitely options when it comes to replacing the clutch, but this particular bike I haven't been able to find a good replacement, so just having this redone seems to have worked out well for me. So once you take this out, this whole thing comes off, and now you can go ahead and clean the rest of it up with, make sure that if your belt looks all cracked up or it just doesn't look right, then just replace it with another Bando belt. And you can even see the part number there of the belt that needs to go in it. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and clean this all up and clean the variator up, clean the rollers up, and put it all back together. Alright, so I went ahead and I cleaned the variator all out, got all the dust out of it, took care of these Dr. Pulley sliders and cleaned them up real nice. And you can see that Dr. Pulley's written right there on the top. So when you go to install them, make sure that you can read Dr. Pulley. If you can't read Dr. Pulley when you spin them around this way, you've got them in backwards. The other way that you can remember to do it is you can see the metal on this side. If you go counterclockwise, every single one of them, you'll see the metal. What I mean by the metal is the other side, you can't see it. So that's the way you install those. The direction will be right on the package though when you buy them, and they'll perform better than what's in stock. And then you just take the ram plate, stick it right there on top, and it's ready to be installed. Make sure you keep force on it this way, and you can see the dry boss. That's what's in the center here. It's easy to put back in, but keep your hands on the back. Also, don't put that plate that was on there, like I said, throw it away. You're not going to use it. And just like the inside of mine, all the grease is in there. No graphite, nothing, just like this. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't care what video out there you watch on YouTube, if somebody's doing it that way, they're doing it wrong, because nobody does it that way anymore. So it's ready to be installed. Okay, so I went ahead and I put the nut back on, both the variator and the clutch. When you go to put this on, be very mindful of the spline that's underneath here. Just make sure that you pull this as taut as you can. Pull it down and it'll open this up a bit, giving you enough room to put the shim on and then to put this on along with the nut. So you can see how I clean everything out of there, and should be all set to put the side back on. I went ahead and put a coat of flat black on here just to touch it up a little bit. So I thought it'd look a little bit better. It was pretty marred up, and the only heat resistant paint I had was the flat black. So I'll throw this back on and we'll go from there. And something I did change on there, you can see a little bit of the super glue. I ended up super gluing this rubber gasket back on, and then that way it makes it much easier to install. Cleaned up. Rollers, as I showed you, everything's cleaned up. Wipe that all down with Simply Green, and use my torque wrench to put the two nuts, the 14 millimeter along with the 19 millimeter that goes there, and we're ready to put the cover on. Probably a good idea just to wipe it up. You can see I started to wipe up things, because how often do you take these covers? I went ahead also and just wiped out the bell. The bell looked fine, so after 1,000 miles it looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and put the cover back on and we'll go from there. Alright, so I got it back on just to remind folks of what I used. It's all I had, so I guess it's going to be flat black, but it's high heat paint up to 2000 degrees, so that's what I used on the cover. Alright, so I already put the 2 bolts on right there. I'll go ahead and I'll put the other 2 back on. I already put the strap. Be mindful when you pull this off that there's a screw that holds this strap on, so don't try to tear it off. If it doesn't, you got to loosen the strap. Alright, so we put a bolt there, which has got a little loop of steel that holds the drain hose from the carb, and we put another bolt right there that keeps the brake line in check. So now that's all back on. Alright, we'll put this back on next. Like I showed you before, there's a bolt there, there, and then there's one that goes on the back there. So you can see how that corresponds to that one there, that one, and that one. So, and then the other one is on the underside. So I'll go ahead and slide this back on. Okay, so I tightened up my snaps, put this piece back down, then I put the middle piece back down. Alright, so I got that center part back on, did some detailing with some Armor All just to make it look nice, and we're going to go ahead and do a cold start. This is kind of a follow-up to that video I had not too long ago on how I had fixed it, so just to show you all we're still good. Starts right up like a charm. So I just wanted to make sure that the belt wasn't hanging up or anything on the inside. Alright, so I went ahead and I put the 2 nuts with the 2 hooks for the helmets. Put the 2 screws, one on either side for that. Put the screw for that. Now I just need to connect on the back, orange and orange and green for my turn signals, and put that piece back on right there. Alright, so just going to do a quick walk around. You can see the new transmission cover paint job. I think it came out pretty good. So we'll go ahead and give her a start. Starts right up. Just to show you a quick walk around. Everything looks good. Detailed her up. That headlight, that LED. I'm telling you what, at night, that thing is just incredible. Anybody who has one of these bikes, get an LED and put it on, because it definitely helped for my night riding. That's all she wrote for this video. 1,000 miles on it since I did all the service. So I figured it was a good time to take care of the transmission, just make sure everything under there was doing okay, and looks like everything's good. So that's the end of this video. If you like my videos, please subscribe, and please leave me any comments, good or bad. I love reading them all, and I try to answer every single one of them. That's all. See you next time.